Eat the rich! Eat the rich! Oh my god, guys, we have to eat the rich! This is a ridiculously prolific saying. We don't need a handful of people doing zero waste perfectly. We need millions of people eating the rich. I have a feeling that this was supposed to be a climate change thing, and it was co-opted to be eat the rich. The font's not quite right here, but still, it is definitely how they feel. If there's one thing the left gets consistently right, it's that there are elements of the rich that actually hate the poor. They actually view their accumulation of wealth as a signal that they are worthy to run the entirety of society and the world. And they absolutely equate populist objections to their ideas as extremist attacks against them. And if it's against them, well then it's against all of society, isn't it? That is how these people think. That's why you get such bizarre headlines as this. Charles Koch teams up with George Soros, Patreon, and Airbnb to fight online extremism. Because it doesn't matter if you're on the extreme left, like George Soros, or the extreme right, like the Koch brothers. The rich have a grand vision for society, and they're not going to let something as pesky as the working class get in the way. This article, by the way, talks about the After Charlottesville project, and it's basically the headline billionaire philanthropists teaming up with big tech in order to censor what they subjectively view as extremist content on the internet. But it's not just that. All the shady stuff that the left thinks the stereotypical fat cat does probably actually happens. Funneling money into offshore accounts? Absolutely. Exploiting third world labor to drive down costs, and bending over backwards to authoritarian regimes while doing so. Absolutely. You must have all heard about this, right? Apple, Samsung, and Sony among 83 global brands using Uyghur Muslim forced labor in factories. This is a case of multinational corporations actually using slavery, and we can definitely call it slavery. The Uyghur Muslims are currently being genocided by China. What they do is they arrest them on a trumped-up charge. The charge usually being something like being too Muslim or not being communist enough, some BS like that. Resisting Sinicization, maybe. And then, once they're in the prison system, they're put to work. So everyone seems to be okay with forced labor since they're technically criminals, even though they haven't done anything wrong. Here's the list of all 83 companies currently exploiting Uyghur slave labor in China. Abercrombie & Fitch, Acer, Adidas, Alstom, Amazon, Apple, Asus, Bike Motor? BMW, Bombardier, Bosch, BYD, Calvin Klein, Candy, Carter's, Cerruti 1881, Changan Automobile, Cisco, CRRC, Dell, Electrolux, Fila, Founder Group, GAC Group, Gap, Geely Auto, General Motors, Google, Goertech, H&M, Haier, Hart Schaffner Marx, Hisense, Hitachi, HP, HTC, Huawei, iFlyTech, Jack & Jones, Jaguar, Japan Display, LL Bean, Lacoste, Land Rover, Lenovo, LG, Li Ning, Marks & Spencer, Mayor, Mizu, Mercedes-Benz, MG, Microsoft, Mitsubishi, Mitsumi, Nike, Nintendo, Nokia, The North Face, Oculus, Oppo, Panasonic, Polo Ralph Lauren, Puma, Roe, Psych Motor? Is this related to Bike Motor? Samsung, SGMW, Sharp, Siemens, Skechers, Sony, TDK, Tommy Hilfiger, Toshiba, Toshiba Tongfang, Uniqlo, Victoria's Secret, Vivo, Volkswagen, Xiaomi, Zara, Zynga, and ZTE. So whenever the right wing of politics says that there's nothing wrong with the uber rich, I don't want to hear it. Everyone is capable of absolute evil, and that includes people with money. And the CEOs of each and every single one of these companies is currently profiting off of slavery. So I get it when some people say eat the rich. But at the same time, I do have to say, hashtag not all rich people. PewDiePie exposed an entire generation to anti-Semitism and racism, and he's a multimillionaire. Sorry if I don't cry when he gets robbed. I can't believe this is a controversy on the left. How exactly do you think the revolution is going to go down? We ask them nicely? And here's the fundamental problem with the left's view on this topic. PewDiePie is a multimillionaire. However, from what I've seen, he definitely takes care to make sure he's not exploiting anybody. All of his merch isn't made in a Chinese sweatshop somewhere. It's made in Canada by a company that actually pays their workers a fair wage. And then you get people who go mask off this hard. This is over somebody protesting Buttigieg by promoting his hanging. Jesus. Can you let me know why there's a screenshot floating around of you promoting the hanging of the first major LGBTQ candidate for president? Please tell me this is fake. Because if it's not, that's going to be an issue. The DNC would surely need to get involved. If it's not true, please advise now. 1, I'm gay, so okay. 2, I didn't threaten him. I said he deserves the same as billionaires. You're gay, so you can promote the hanging of gay people? That doesn't make any sense. I am so upset that this is true. To promote the hanging of those you disagree with is just wrong on so many levels. I'll be contacting the Texas Democrats. This is unacceptable. Only billionaires and those who serve them. I never said anything actionable, so whatever. I think Pete is a ladder-climbing sociopath. I couldn't give a fuck if he's gay. He's a shitty, self-serving asshole who works for billionaires. That's your opinion. One of you advocates the hanging of political enemies, the other debates them. Seems to me he's not the sociopath between the two of you. Anyways, I'll leave you alone. Wouldn't want you to be late to that lynching you have planned later. Frankly, I prefer guillotines anyway. I'm sure you do. These are the radicals that the left has courted over the past decade or so. And they're finally beginning to reap what they've sown. Simply being rich is enough to get you on their hit list, even if you actually got that money fair and square. Of course, their counterargument will always be that there is no ethical way to get rich. And whenever you ask them to explain that, they fundamentally fall back on the idea that all employment is inherently exploitative, because the worker has no choice. He needs the money so that he doesn't starve. So even though he's consenting to work there, and he's agreeing to exchange his labor for money, because he's being coerced into it by the threat of starvation or loss of shelter if he doesn't work, then it's not a real choice. And maybe it's just me, but this sounds like very similar logic to what those lesbian incels like to say about straight women having sex with straight men. That the woman's consent isn't actually real because men hold all the institutional power. In any case, the fundamental flaw with their argument is that it's not a function of capitalism that people need food and shelter. It's a function of reality. Even if you lived in the communist utopia, somebody somewhere would have to labor to create your food and your shelter. Capitalism simply says it might as well be you who does it, since you're responsible for yourself. This complete lack of understanding has created a group of people that are basically like this person here. If I can't even afford ramen, I'll eat the rich. A packet of ramen is what, 50 cents or something? Meanwhile, she spent probably $200 or so on these boots. And where is she? It looks like a university? How much did that cost to attend? How about the rest of your clothes? Were that expensive? That's a pretty good looking backpack there. And wait, are those car keys? I don't think this woman's been poor a day in her life. And that is the fundamental rule here. Whenever somebody on the radical left says, eat the rich, what they define as the rich is anyone who has more money than them. And they want to eat them not because they're starving, but because they're jealous of their success. I mean, what does your average university professor make? Sometimes 6 figures a year, definitely at least 5. Probably pretty high up there in the 5 as well. That's like solidly middle class. And yet they're the ones who are indoctrinating year after year of students into bougie communists. And why? I know there's that banned video from Yuri, whatever his name is, from the KGB. It was taken down off YouTube stupidly a little while ago, where he basically admitted that the Russians had infiltrated the West's academic sphere, and they were going to use the universities to spread communism. Theory checks out. But I'm not sure if it's that. I bet if you added a 0 to the end of the salary of every single arts and humanities university professor, all of this eat the rich nonsense would stop. Because we're talking about extremely intelligent people who were led to believe that their intelligence would open doors for them in life, and to some extent it did. But you can't just be intelligent to be in the 1%, you have to be intelligent and hardworking. And a bunch of people who skipped over higher education, who became entrepreneurs, and who built their own businesses and became rich that way. I could definitely see a lot of these ivory tower grifters being really resentful about their success. In any case, when you're talking about eating the rich is whoever's richer than you. Let's take that to its logical conclusion. Mark Ruffalo, the $1 million actor. It's time for an economic revolution. Capitalism today is failing us, killing us, and robbing from our children's future. Oh, holy... Dude, you do realize that you are going to be the one who gets guillotined, right? Like, you are the 1%? The Young Turks' progressive founder urged his staff not to unionize. At a tense meeting with employees, HYUK argued that a union doesn't belong at a small news network struggling to make profits. I thought you were the biggest independent news network, dude. What do you mean, small network? The best passage in the article is this one. HYUK said he was caught off guard by the union effort that appeared on Twitter the day of the meeting, and that it was so early in the process he wasn't sure if it was real or he was being punked. He acknowledged that he threw papers in the meeting in a downward direction, not towards anyone, and that he reprimanded an employee whom he believed to be smiling. According to staffers, HYUK said it would be funny later. Anonymous statement they found unsettling. He told HuffPost it wasn't meant to be a threat. The person smiling seemed to be openly mocking the idea that the company might not survive after 18 years. And we put all this blood, sweat, and tears into it. I don't find the idea of us going down funny. Well, that's the difference between a worker and an entrepreneur, isn't it? Somebody who owns a business and somebody who's just punching time. They don't care about your dream, Cenk. This is why business owners always object to the idea of the collective ownership of their business, the collectivization of the means of production. It's because some people just don't give a shit. They will destroy your business, destroy your livelihood, and then go get a job somewhere else. They don't care. They haven't put into it what you've put into it. They weren't there like you were, working all by yourself trying to make the thing get off the ground. They don't give a shit. Why should some socialist government force you to co-own with them? They're obviously not on your level. But this is the environment that the left has made for themselves. Cenk Uygur doesn't view himself as one of the rich that needs to be eaten, but his employees certainly view him that way. And they're all too happy to destroy the Young Turks in the name of social justice. And speaking of governments forcing businesses to be co-ops, remember when Vaush the brainlet in his debate with Sargon said that that's exactly what should happen? That businesses should be forced to be co-ops because they're more just, they're more moral, they're more productive, they're better for everyone? Well, let's listen to Vaush talk about why his business shouldn't be a co-op.
So you are a monopolist owner of a means of production called the Vaush channel. I had a look through your channel. It's not a gotcha thing. I'm genuinely curious. And you seem to be the host of every show. And so I'm kind of curious why the people who work with you don't get to host your show. In other words, why don't you take your channel and do what you suggest is the best thing to do, have other people host your channel, share your profits with them, get them involved, rather than paying them in this cold, dry calculations of mutual utility stuff. Why don't you put your theories into practice?
Yeah, I do think there are reasonable thresholds of worker participation behind which it's not reasonably expected that you should adopt a cooperative model. For my case, an example, I probably do about like 95% of the work to keep the channel afloat.
But you wouldn't if you let other people host, right?
Well, that is true. I could spread the work around more, but the main reason why I think the co-op model is essential, and broadly speaking, is because it is a solution to this very particular type of wage exploitation that we see in the traditionally run firm. And
but that's what you were talking about with the people you pay. Why don't you invite them in to collectively own your channel rather than pay them if the wage paying is exploitive?
Yeah, because I do not think that the exploitation model is descriptive when we're talking about people who aren't expected to supply consistent wage labor to whatever firm it is they participate in. So just because a person, for example, like I might shoot them a message on Discord like once or twice a month or something and be like, hey, can you cut down this video from the DNC debates? I'll give you $200 or $300. Just because they have that level of engagement, while I do agree there is a fundamental level of inequality in the relationship between us in that bargaining system, I don't believe that type of exploitation is one which should be ameliorated with a worker-owned collective. Now, I will say...
Wait, so it's for other people, not for you, right?
Well, no, I hardly think the way I run my channel is in any way comparable to like a business.
His fundamental argument here is that I'm not rich enough. It wouldn't work for me. I'm not the rich you should be eating. And then, of course, there's Bernie Sanders saying millionaires a lot less often. In 2016, he was all about taking on the millionaires and billionaires. This time around, though, he only talks about the billionaires.
Millionaires, billionaires, billionaires, millionaires, billionaires, millionaires, and billionaires.
Oh, Sanders himself became a millionaire in 2016 as he vaulted into the national consciousness. Book deals drove more money into his pockets. I see.
Standing up to the billionaire class. Billionaires, 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 billionaires.
I wrote a best-selling book. If you write a best-selling book, you can be a millionaire too. With those words, Bernie Sanders acknowledged on Tuesday that he has joined the ranks of the millionaires and billionaires he has vilified for most of his career. It's just that simple, isn't it? Hey, all you poor people out there, all you people saying eat the rich, just write a book, you can be a millionaire. It's okay. Bernie Sanders says so. What's going on here is that it becomes harder and harder to advocate for socialism, for high taxation, for the redistribution of wealth, for collective ownership of the means of production, any of this nonsense. It becomes harder to advocate for it the richer you get. Because the richer you get, the more work that you've put in. And as soon as you start putting in work, one, you don't want the rewards of that work taken away from you by the state. And two, you start to care a whole lot more where your tax dollars go. The people at the bottom, a lot of them just don't care. They don't give a shit. It's Obama phones to them, man. It's the government giving them stuff. Now, this isn't universal. Obviously, there are some poor people out there who just can't catch a break. And not only would their lives be better if they had some kind of assistance program to lift them out of poverty, but they would make the lives of those around them better as well through their own work, if they were just given a chance. Those people exist, but we can't pretend that's everyone at the bottom. And in much the same way, we can't pretend that everyone at the top, they're all just saints as well. People who started businesses solely to create jobs and make the world a better place. No, they can be just as evil and exploitative as everyone else. In much the same way, the working class is not this group of completely pure-hearted people. And this whole eat the rich thing, it really does just boil down to people being jealous of those more successful than they are. There may be good reasons to hate what some people do with all of their wealth, but there is absolutely no reason to believe that if that wealth were redistributed and given to those in the bottom rungs of society, that they wouldn't do the exact same thing if they could. But nonetheless, the attitude eat the rich still persists. So, who are the rich, anyway? And I don't mean somebody who makes more money than you. Who are the actual rich? Are you in the world's top 1%? A $32,400 annual income will easily place American school teachers, registered nurses, and other modestly salaried individuals among the global 1% of earners. What these activists claim to be working class or lower middle class or whatever, they are the rich. There are, of course, people much richer than that. There are the hyper-rich. There are the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. But the entire rest of the world is looking at the West with envy, including all of those rich kids who are too dumb to understand that they're calling for their own heads. Should there ever actually be any kind of worldwide communist revolution, and let's be honest, there's never going to be, but let's say that there was one, and let's say that it stuck to the values of communism, every single person who has said eat the rich is going to find themselves on a chopping block. And the only thing standing between privileged Marxist college kids and the abyss is capitalism. You're welcome.